All right, it's about that time when we get into the dailies. With me already in studio, we have public policy analyst Arnold Maliba in a yellow tie. I don't know whether it is stelling or not, but in a short while, I also expect Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate and political analyst, and Mark Bichachi, communication strategist. This is what we're interrogating this morning. Shareholding in government, will bipartisan talks see another divided presidency? And speaking of that, this is the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. Question: falling apart? Kenya Kwanza leaders appear to be reading from different scripts. Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. Cracks President Ruto. Let me just come in closer. It is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not correct. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua quoted as stating those who joined us late should not expect much at the expense of Kenya Kwanza loyalists. We will continue giving good jobs to those who stood with us from the beginning. And the Deputy President, Arnold, took the view yesterday that he and the President are actually reading from the same script. He said development is for everyone across the board, but when it comes to prime positions, that is the preserve of those who stood with President William Ruto in the polls. In your view, are they speaking from different scripts or they're aligned?
I think, first of all, even having this particular headline and the discussion we're having today is, for me, quite an unnecessary venture, because, first of all, we've really spinned this thing beyond what it's supposed to be. I do not think that what the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has been saying is exactly what we've actually gone around to spin and mean when he spoke about shareholding and everything else. He simply meant that horse trading is a very normal thing in politics. That, let me just ask, do you really think that Hassan Omar, Eliud Owalo, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and the others were supporting Kenya Kwanza like it's missionary work? This is service to the Lord? Not really. They were here because they knew that upon victory, they had legitimate expectations out of this particular government. So I do not think that the Deputy President, of course, there is a way we pick stuff and then and he went outside and said that this government is not falling apart. He said that. I don't know whether the paper today, I've not looked at the depth of the story. I don't know whether the paper actually goes ahead and actually lifts that story. He says there is nothing that he's
He did say the government is stable.
The government is stable. There is nothing like falling apart. But you see, I really want to start from this particular point. There's been this campaign about Tugege and Tugegestan. That is the core of why we are here. The people who actually are pushing that narrative are what I would call ethnic nationalists who do not know any other way of doing things other than being in control. And they now want to bully a community into some ethnic retreat so that they can actually rule them. You know, they are behaving like white nationalists. When Obama came to power, they didn't believe that a black man would come in. So when you see people actually trying to raise individuals like Maina Njenga, for example, quote unquote, to become their leader, just because this is a reaction that a community voted in a way they didn't like. As in, this is a nation, it's not an experiment. We can't play around here. People like, for example, I saw the women MP for Kiambu, Wamchomba, yesterday. You know, she suffers from hangover from a past regime where if you looked at the budget of the nation, the national budget, and you looked at how they appointed seats at that particular time, it was reflective of how the core support of government looked like. But we have to move on. The republic must grow. We are moving towards a perfect republican democracy where it doesn't matter whether you voted for a government or not. The rights that are in the Constitution, Article 43, whatever it is, you are entitled to them. So we cannot have a people who continuously have a way of defining politics and power that if they are not in the presidency, if they are not the PS interior, if they are not in control of the treasury, if they are not in control of the key seats, then they are in opposition and they have to lobby a whole community to go into a certain direction so that they lord over them. Those ethnic nationalists need to be shamed around, to actually need to be shamed, because that's not how you run a nation. The same things.
And we'll get to magazeti. Let's see what else is on the front page. Kiptum's road to greatness, and this is Calvin Kiptum record breaker Chicago Marathon. He ran it in a time of 2 hours 35 seconds. Hongera kwake. And at the very top here, I see inside governor's fight for roads, billions, the fight for control over nearly 100 billion shillings collected by the Kenya Roads Board from the fuel levy annually has emerged as a new battlefront between governors and the national government that has threatened to spill to the courts. And we continue with the book Serialization, Chesoni's Death and the Battle to Save My Career. The author is the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, doctor from Israel, and Pamela Stoney sat down with him for an interview, and so the serialization continues in today's Daily Nation. Let's take a look at what else is contained in the dailies this morning. Looking at Taifa Leo, kuna kitu kipya hapa. Mapatano wasinge onana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je, kunani? An image here of Kalonzo Musyoka on one side, Raila Odinga on the other, William Ruto at the center. I did see an image up here of Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president. Gachagua akunja mkia, agutusha wengi kwa kutaka urafiki na uhuru, huku Ruto akianza kumponda. What did you make of, let's say, the statements, for instance, Arnold's, to begin with, Ochilo Ayako yesterday, Governor Migori County, explaining why he welcomed the president to his county with open arms? Do you agree with this particular headline on Taifa Leo, that viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto? I remember he said kuna rais moja na kuna baba moja.
It's actually, in my opinion, quite sad, not just Ochilo alone. I saw Orengo take quite substantive time to explain why he was actually in that particular event. And that is a shame. I saw Anyang' Nyong'o take time to explain. And then I saw Gladys Wanga take her time to explain why she's there, and she was there, quote unquote, because of development and stuff. Then, of course, we were talking about Ochilo Ayako yesterday. In my opinion, and you know, in Gladys Wanga's instance, for example, it took the president to also intervene and say, to emphasize that she has not defected, she's here because of such and such. You know, when is our democracy going to actually get to a level where you can actually do something and people see it for what it is? You don't have to keep on explaining. That level of explaining for me felt like it's kindergarten politics, whereas in Orengo was like, I am here because I was called and I was told, so otherwise I wasn't coming, blah blah blah. That level of doing politics is just wrong for me, because somehow as a country we must get to a place where we can actually run a country. This is a country. It's not a chiefdom. You know, these ethnic nations that we've actually raised all over and we are struggling to bring them down should actually come down. So, and also even having headlines that talk about how people are warming up to the president and stuff also just, of course, affirms the feeling that we really have not gotten there. But it is wrong when a whole governor has to, the first statement they say that I am here because of. Ordinarily, what did we expect them to do? We know their work, and but even wananchi understand their work. That when the president has come down here, whatever he's doing actually touches on you. That's why it will be foolhardy for a member of parliament, for example, to say, I will stay away because the president, I belong to a different party and the president is coming to my area. So they do something that is consequential to your being in power. And then when you come back, you say they are fighting you. So when we elect leaders, but there is no people who are outside of government and in government, so long as they are elected, all of those people are government. That is one thing that we really don't sometimes really emphasize. All these people are in government, whether you are in opposition or you are not, so long as you've been elected and you're in office, you are government.
But how surprising is it? I understand where they're coming from, because this electorate, we have been led to believe heavily leans towards Raila Odinga, yeah. And he has not acknowledged, or rather at some point he declined to acknowledge the presidency of William Ruto, and the MPs who had trooped to State House, quote unquote, were censured by the party. So then is it a surprise? Because there were questions the MPs were asking, when governors meet the president, it's not a big deal, but when we meet the president, all of a sudden we're not deserving of our political posts under those political party tickets?
You know, when you see the leaders that were punished, for example, except for Esther Passaris, who had a small part on her back, majority, the core of those who were punished were from Nyanza. And I think they did not do disclaimers. You know, like if you're going to meet the president, you walk around with a disclaimer on your face that I'm here for development, I am not here because I've defected. Which for me, like I said, feels like tautology. We can't actually keep on moving.
Wait, to what? It feels like what?
I say tautology.
Tautology. And then there was, in your previous remarks to do with the perceived rift between the president and his deputy, you talked about Tugege stand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so when leaders have to walk around as if they are walking on eggshells, they are so careful, they can't be seen in some places. Yet, where is their working position? Where is their office? Their first office is in parliament, for example, and they meet together. Why don't we, for example, have an office, a parliament for the opposition, and then a parliament for quote-unquote those in government? They are working in the same place. They pass the same bills. They are paid by the same budget. They have got the same privileges. They get the same salary and allowances and everything else. That is okay until you have to appear in some other spaces. So that leaders have to walk around explaining why they are there. And I actually was explaining to a group yesterday that for me, it really didn't sound so good, at least as a reflection on our democracy. It's okay for the reality of the ground. Right. But that James Orengo took about 3 minutes to explain why he was attending that. And that Anyang' Nyong'o was so brief in that particular meeting, and he took 80%. I think he spoke for about 2-3 minutes, and 2 minutes were about why he is there. And then, of course, Gladys Wanga had to emphasize that she's there for development, and she did it so painstakingly that the president actually then came in to say, let me also help and clarify that she has not defected. Okay. And then now, of course, Ochilo Ayako yesterday. That explanation actually behooves them of power. They come off as people who are not their own men and women. Okay. And that whatever they are doing, somebody elsewhere, they are just puppets. And that somebody somewhere is pulling strings. I'm
curious what Mark Bichachi has to say on the subject, communication strategist. Mark, tulikuwa tunaangalia hii headline ya Taifa Leo. Kuna kitu kipya hapa. And reading this mapatano, let me just come in closer. Here we go. Wasingeonana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kumchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je, kunani?
First and foremost, thanks for having me, and apologies for being slightly late. One of the things that we have to be very, very clear about, and I've said this on this show before, is that the statement that Kenya is a corporate concern that has shareholders brought unintended consequences. One of those unintended consequences is it felt as if that leaders had to pander to the government of the day to be seen that they are worthy of development, that they are worthy of sharing in what we proverbially call the national cake. For example, when you see Anyang' Nyong'o and the rest speaking in the manner for which Arnold Maliba has said, it is not from nowhere. There is a history. Because it is assumed, just like the Tugege nation that he's talked about, marched themselves towards State House from Jubilee Party to form Jubilee BA. I'm not even sure which one they belong to. There's a lot of apprehension within the political circles that we have created such an us versus them environment that when them is with us, people ask, have we joined them? That is the question. And it is unfortunate that the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, would disagree with the President when the President correctly says that Kenya belongs to all of us. When people voted in 2022, they were not voting in a referendum to separate us from the Tugege nation and the rest of us. That's not what we voted for. We voted for one Kenya to have one president. I did not not vote for William Ruto, but he is my president. And when he says and does the right thing, like when he says that Kenya belongs to all of us and we should all have a share in that particular concern, I agree with him completely. And therefore, I also disagree vehemently with Rigathi Gachagua, even though I understand where he's coming from. The deputy president is at pains to maintain his power, and he assumes his power comes from Mount Kenya. I need to remind him that the votes that William Ruto got in Mount Kenya, maybe 2 or 3% is from Rigathi Gachagua. 98 to 97% came directly to William Ruto. It is a mistake to underplay the political power that is William Ruto.
And related to that, because this is, we had looked at the Daily Nation just before you came in, and this is the headline related to what we're discussing this morning. Sorry, this is page 6 of the Daily Nation, and I'll come back to it, but related to the Taifa Leo headline, Nyanza still ODM zone, Raila allies insist after Ruto tour, and the minority leader in the National Assembly, Opio Wandai, here is quoted, "Everyone is welcome to visit Nyanza. As far as we are concerned, Mr. Odinga has not recognized his presidency, and as such, we don't." We'll come back to that. I wanted us to look at the front page of the Daily Nation. Here it is. Falling apart is the question. Kenya Kwanza leaders appear to be reading from different scripts. Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. You've referenced those statements. This is what the president said. It is primitive and backward for anybody to imagine that any region of Kenya cannot get development on account of how they voted. That is not correct. The deputy president, those who joined us late, should not expect much at the expense of Kenya Kwanza loyalists. We will continue giving good jobs to those who stood with us from the beginning. And Arnold Maliba said they were not doing missionary work, said loyalists. But my question is this. Rigathi Gachagua took the view yesterday in Nandi. He was in Nandi for the launch, I believe, of an ACK, commissioning of an ACK plaza. But he took the view that him and the president are saying the same thing. He said development is for all Kenyans, but when it comes to jobs, those are the preserve of those who stood with William Ruto. So are they reading from different scripts?
Let me just understand what our deputy president is trying to say. So the next time you apply for a job and you write your name Arnold Maliba, you must underneath there state when you joined UDA and whether it was before or after the other applicants.
To be fair, he said the plum positions. The plum ones.
Talk about plum positions. Because my question is, if today there is a job for the chair of Kenya Export Promotion Council, right? For example, would we take someone who's a loyalist or someone who's good at export promotion? You know, let me tell you, I will not waste any time discussing this issue. Being in opposition is not supposed to be the same as being a murderer and therefore being taken, your rights being taken away. Every Kenyan has a right to be appointed into any position. Every Kenyan has a right to every plum job. There is no requirement whatsoever constitutionally, legally, or even in the imagination of everyone else other than Rigathi Gachagua that you need to be a UDA loyalist. That is not a requirement by law whatsoever at all. Question: you want to tell me that my good friend Osiani, when he was put as CAS, as a DO or an ODM member, he could not perform because ODM cannot understand Jubilee leadership? That's not true. The truth is, and this is, for me, I find very sad. You cannot tell me that UDA loyalists have no use whatsoever for brains outside UDA. Kwani the rest of us have what? Black matter instead of gray matter. Let's just be serious. The fact that this country is at a point where we're discussing positions based on how people voted is unfair. And unfortunately, the result will be division of this country for no good reason. Because in 2027, guess what? Rigathi Gachagua himself might find himself voting against William Ruto. And then what?
Okay. So I know, Arnold, you would like to reply. So briefly, then we'll put a pin in it and come back.
I think there's a little bit of conflation here. The president is talking about development. He's been very, very clear. William Ruto is the president of the Republic of Kenya. Ruto and Gachagua is also saying the truth, which let us not really, like I said earlier on, there is quite a number of things. There are a number of things we are mixing up here. Whatever the deputy president is saying is true. We might not love his way of saying things. And like I said earlier on, horse trading is normal in politics. And I asked you, did you expect that Moses Francis Wetangula was supporting Kenya Kwanza as just a well-wisher? Was Eliud Owalo supporting this government as a well-wisher? No, he was there and had legitimate expectation that were it to win, he would come in. We are mixing two things here. There is a battle of succession in Mount Kenya. And like I said, there are people from that particular region who are bullying the entire community and guilt-tripping the community because the community made a decision, a number of voters made a decision without kowtowing to their way of doing things. So they are now bullying them, shaming them and calling them Tugeges and even calling the whole area Tugegistan because they want them in a corner where they can control them. These people have a hangover where once upon a time in this particular country, you looked at every appointment and it looked like the core support of the president and the deputy president a little bit, and then the rest of Kenya walikuwa wanaongezwa kama chumvi ama kachumbari kafirifiri kwa umbali kabisa. As in the rest of Kenya walikuwa na sprinkliwa tu juu. As in when the appointments are done, you look at the national budget and that is how it looked like. If you did an audit of the last 10 years, exactly that is how it looks like. That then there was the core of what was supporting the government of the day, and then the rest of Kenya ilikuwa kafirifiri kwa umbali tu inakuwa tu sprinkled juu hivi. So there are people who still have got a hangover of such like an order. But as a republic we must move forward. As a country we must get to a place where every Kenyan is a Kenyan and the government is the government for everyone. So what the deputy president is saying here is saying that of course we have got our people who supported us. And I need to repeat, all those people did not do it as missionaries. It was not missionary work. They were not spreading the gospel. And even people who spread the gospel have the hope that by doing that they will go to heaven. They don't do that so that they go to hell. It's not free of charge. So we are mixing up things here and trying to spin something that does not exist. The deputy president said this is not falling apart. I know that the phrasing, and you know Mark will actually take the communication angle. That is his strength. The phrasing of that particular statement, forgetting the kind of public that we have today, was quite a dangerous one. So people would actually go around and spin and spin and spin. You see, Opio and I, for example, says that Baba has not recognized the president and everybody else is allowed to go to Nyanza and everything else. Of course, all of us know that the legitimacy of the presidency is not in the place of Raila Odinga's recognition. It's not his preserve. There is what the constitution does. So whether he recognizes or not, and that is why like leaders have to painstakingly go out and explain. But they will still have done this painstaking explanation, whether the shareholding statement had been made or not. They are doing that because they are captive of a force that should not be, we shouldn't be talking about that at this particular point in the time, or rather in the life of our republic. Okay. We need to move on.
Okay, a number of questions arise for me, Mark, but let me just quickly look at the other dailies and we can come back more substantively in the next few minutes. Business Daily, this is it. Kenya to compel foreigners to buy local health cover plan will hand local insurers a major windfall. New fund to replace NHIF to be one of the biggest winners. Safaricom halves suppliers as spending breaches 100 billion shillings. Safaricom more than halved the number of suppliers. There we go. In the 6 years to March this year, despite the total procurement spending on local and foreign businesses crossing the 100 billion shilling mark, the telco has disclosed in the latest sustainability report that it closed March with 720 suppliers, marking the 6th straight month of reduced number of businesses trading with Kenya's most profitable company. The 720 made up of 550 local and 170 foreign was a drop from last year's 799 and a 62.8% decline from the high of 1,172 in the financial year ended March 2017. On the ticker this morning, here we go. Kenya imports from Russia, Ukraine hit 51 billion shillings. Expenditure on imports from Russia and Ukraine climbed nearly fourfold in the first half of the year, official data showed on Thursday, driven largely by increased, what word is that? Can't make it out clearly. Increased orders of wheat and maize grains. Telkom Kenya loses 1.6 million customers. Telkom Kenya, the third biggest telco in the country, lost 1.62 million subscribers between March last year and June this year amid the latest crackdown on irregularly registered SIM cards. An analysis of official data shows that the telco had 2.25 million active subscribers as of June, a 39% dip from 4.14 million subscribers in March last year. And finally, on the ticker, pension fund assets up 127 billion shillings on NSSF new rates. Pension fund assets rose by 127 billion shillings in the first half of this year, boosted in part by the introduction of higher mandatory contributions to the NSSF and exchange gains on offshore investments. Let's take a look now at the Standard. And here we go. Broke millionaires. Doing business with government can be lucrative, but in some occasions, the money has always been on paper, with pending bills running into hundreds of billions. Government suppliers are regretting their business decisions to wade into the tender business. Simply the best. Kiptum, new marathon record holder. Will Ruto excel in Nyanza, where many have failed, and Israel faces long, difficult war with Hamas? Let's see at the very top here how hysteria manifests in adolescence. Let's take a look now at the Star, and this is the front page. Ruto succession battle threatens unity in rift. At the center of the struggle is fight for president's heir for the 2032 general polls. Possible successors include CS Murkomen and Senator Aaron Cheruyot, and an image here of KWS do heavy lifting as they load a buffalo into a truck. This is where Opejeta Conservancy for translocation to Tundra Conservancy in Laikipia. Ruto fires warning shot at cartels as he moves to save sugar industry. He reiterated his statement of Mambo ni Matatu, because it says these, quote, cartels holding the country hostage at the courts. Elegant woman Nguviu secondary student celebrate headmistress 47 years after leaving school. And Maraga reforms hundreds of senior police officers moved as new transfer policy takes effect. So this is the front page of the Star. I will suggest we take a break, gentlemen, and then now come back substantively with the topic of discussion. Ishmael Nyaribo has joined us, Wakili, advocate, and also political analyst. And we've touched a little bit on the topic of conversation already. This is the front page of the Daily Nation, falling apart, Ruto and Gachagua in a back and forth over, quote, shareholding. When you look at the Taifa Leo, it's not too far, because they say, kuna kitu kipya hapa, je kunani? And the details here as ishara za urafiki baina ya Ruto na Raila Kalonzo zazua gumzo kuu. Wasingeonana uso kwa macho baada ya uchaguzi mkuu uliosababisha maandamano makali, ila kwa sasa viongozi wa Azimio wameanza kuchangamkia Rais Ruto huku wakimponda Gachagua. Je kunani? On the other side of this break.